is a moment. You know it. You felt it. Even if you never said it out loud. You look in the mirror and a stranger looks back. Not broken exactly. Just hollowed out. Used up by a life you didn't fully choose. Maybe you trusted the wrong people. Maybe you played fair in a game where nobody else was playing fair. Maybe you gave everything to a version of yourself that the world quietly dismantled while you weren't looking. Or maybe nothing dramatic happened at all. You just went soft, comfortable, naive. And one morning you woke up and realized years had slipped through your fingers while you were busy being nice. If any of that just hit something in you, stay. Don't scroll. Because here's the uncomfortable truth nobody tells you when you're standing in that wreckage. The world did not break you by accident. It broke you because you were operating on rules nobody else was actually playing by. You were fair in a game built on leverage. You were patient in a system that rewards decisive action. You waited for permission that was never going to come. What you're about to hear isn't a motivational pep talk. It's not 5 habits from a wellness influencer with a ring light and a green smoothie. This is a survival code, written by a man the world spent 5 centuries slandering, because he had the nerve to describe power exactly as it actually works, instead of how we wish it worked. Niccolò Machiavelli. Diplomat. Exile. A man who served the Florentine Republic, watched it collapse anyway, was arrested, tortured, and stripped of everything he'd built, and instead of writing a memoir about his suffering, he sat down and wrote the single most honest document on human power ever produced. He watched empires rot from the inside and wrote down, with brutal precision, exactly what separates those who get devoured from those who endure. Today, we rebuild. Mind, strategy, and will. 7 ruthless laws, straight from Machiavelli himself. Let's begin. Welcome to the Machiavellian Mind. This channel exists for one reason: to strip away the fairy tales and show you power, influence, and self-command the way they actually operate, not the way a greeting card wants you to believe they operate. If you're new, welcome to the deep end. If you've been here a while, you already know we don't do surface-level comfort talk. We don't tell you to manifest a better life or journal your way out of a hole someone else pushed you into. Before Rule 1, answer this honestly. In your own head, what did you hand over to someone else's mercy? Your leverage, your composure, your ambition, quietly sanded down so you'd be easier to be around and less threatening to people who benefited from you staying small? Hold that answer. By the end of this, you'll understand why Machiavelli believed rebuilding yourself isn't optional. It's the only rational response to a world that will not do it for you, and will actively resist you doing it for yourself. Law 1. Burn the fable you were told about yourself. Every person carries a story about who they are. I'm too trusting. I always get walked over. This is just my personality. Machiavelli had no patience for comforting fictions. In The Prince, he draws a sharp line between how people imagine the world works and how it actually operates, insisting that anyone who governs themselves by the fantasy version rather than the real one is choosing their own ruin. That single distinction is the foundation of everything that follows. Here's what most people miss. The line isn't really about kingdoms and armies. It's about the fable you've been telling yourself, mistaken for the truth. 2 people get betrayed by a business partner. Same betrayal, same financial hit. One tells themselves, I'm cursed with bad luck. People always use me. The other studies exactly how it happened, extracts the pattern, and rebuilds sharper. Harder to exploit next time. Same event, 2 completely different trajectories. That's not cynicism. That's what Machiavelli would call reading the terrain, honestly refusing comforting delusions in favor of what's actually there. So here's your first assignment. Write down the story you've repeated about yourself so many times it calcified into identity. Then ask the Machiavellian question, is this true or merely familiar? Weakness, dressed up as personality, is still weakness. Name it, and it loses its grip. Machiavelli spent years watching princes fall not because fortune turned against them, but because they clung to an outdated image of themselves, the ruler who was once beloved. The general who was once feared long after that image had stopped matching reality. They kept acting from the old story, while the world had already moved on without them. Don't make the same mistake with your own identity. The story that once protected you can become the exact thing that now keeps you small. Law 2. Assume the long peace will not last. Machiavelli lived through invasions, coups, and the sudden collapse of governments that seemed permanent the week before. He didn't write theory from comfort. He wrote it from watching stability evaporate overnight. His core warning: fortune is a river that floods without notice, and only the ones who prepared the banks in advance survive the surge. Translate that into your own life. The job that feels secure. The relationship you assume will hold. The reputation you think is untouchable. None of it is guaranteed. Machiavelli would tell you, the people who get destroyed aren't the unlucky ones, they're the ones who never built any defenses because they assumed today's calm was permanent. This isn't paranoia, it's preparation. If you genuinely accepted that comfort is temporary, would you still be this exposed? Would you still have no plan, no skills in reserve, no version of yourself that could survive the flood? Machiavelli's answer is simple and cold. Build the banks before the storm, not during it. Think about what that actually looks like in practice. It's the skill you keep meaning to learn but keep postponing because things are fine right now. It's the savings cushion you haven't built because the paycheck keeps coming. It's the backup plan you never made because admitting you need one feels like betting against yourself. Machiavelli would call that not humility, he'd call it negligence, dressed up as optimism. Tell me right now in the comments, what's the one vulnerability you've been ignoring because things feel fine at the moment? Law 3. Train your body like it's a weapon. Because it is here's something soft self-help culture gets exactly backwards. The mind cannot be sharp while the body is neglected. Machiavelli, in his writing on military discipline, was explicit: a state that lets its defenses go soft invites its own destruction. The same is true of a person. He wasn't romantic about suffering for its own sake. He was ruthlessly practical. An undisciplined body produces undisciplined judgment. A trained one produces clarity, endurance, and the capacity to act decisively when everyone else hesitates. Some of you are rebuilding after illness, burnout, injury, a body that isn't what it used to be. Machiavelli wouldn't shame that. He'd tell you the discipline isn't about the output. It's about proving to yourself, repeatedly, that you do the hard thing regardless of how you feel. Every time you follow through on something difficult, the early wake up, the walk you didn't want to take, the meal you prepared instead of the easy option, you're gathering evidence. Evidence that you are not a person who falls. That evidence becomes the foundation everything else stands on. Neglect the body long enough, and even the sharpest strategic mind starts making sloppy decisions. Maintain it not for appearances, but because a dull instrument cannot execute a sharp plan. Machiavelli was blunt about this in his writing on military affairs. An army that grows soft in peacetime is an army that gets slaughtered the moment war returns. He wasn't only talking about soldiers. He was describing a universal law. Comfort erodes capability quietly. without announcing itself, and by the time you need your strength, it's already gone if you didn't maintain it deliberately. Law 4. Separate what you command from what you merely hope for. At the center of Machiavellian thinking sits one brutal distinction. There is what you can control through your own action. And there is everything else: the opinions of others, the turns of fortune, the loyalty of people who owe you nothing. Machiavelli's entire philosophy of Vert versus Fortuna rests on this. Fortune, he argued, governs perhaps half of what happens to us, but the other half, or close to it, remains within our own hands if we act with skill and nerve, instead of waiting passively for luck to turn. Most people burn their entire day's energy on the fortune half: what others think, what the algorithm decides, whether someone replies, whether the world is fair. Almost none of it goes toward the half that's actually theirs: their preparation, their strategy, their next move. Draw a line down a page right now if you can. Left side, everything currently occupying your mind. Right side, only what you can actually act on directly. For most people, that right column is small and specific. That's not a flaw, that's the target. Machiavelli would tell you to stop negotiating with the storm and start sharpening the only weapon that's ever truly yours: your own next calculated move. This is why he admired decisive rulers over cautious ones, even when the cautious ones seemed wiser on paper. Caution feels safe, but endless deliberation over things outside your control is just fear wearing a thoughtful mask. Action on the things within your grasp, even imperfect action, beats paralysis every single time fortune actually tests you. Law 5. Choose discomfort before it chooses you. Machiavelli respected one trait above almost all others: the willingness to act boldly and seize the moment rather than wait cautiously for permission from fortune. He believed those who hesitate, who avoid all risk and friction, are the ones fortune eventually crushes, because comfort makes you soft, and softness makes you prey. This doesn't mean recklessness. It means choosing hardship on your own terms before circumstance forces it on you without warning. Skip the easy option when your emotions are begging for it, and sit with the discomfort instead. That's a small act of self-command. Have the confrontation you've been postponing. Sit in silence with no distraction for an hour, which for most people today is the single hardest exercise they could attempt. Every time you choose the harder path deliberately, you shift from someone things happen to into someone who acts. That shift is the entire difference between the ones who get maneuvered by life and the ones who do the maneuvering. Now, before we go further, let me ask something directly. If these first 5 laws have already shifted the way you're thinking about your own situation, take 2 seconds and hit that like button. It costs you nothing, and it's the single biggest signal that tells this platform to put this exact video in front of someone else who's sitting exactly where you were sitting a few minutes ago, hollowed out, exhausted, wondering if there's a way back to themselves. And if you haven't subscribed yet, this is genuinely the moment. This channel exists to keep handing you Machiavelli's playbook, one ruthless, practical law at a time every single week, with nothing softened and nothing sugar-coated. Hit subscribe now so you don't lose this when the next one drops. Law 6. Judge everything by results, not by sentiment. This is the law people find hardest to accept, and it's the one Machiavelli is most infamous for. He insisted that outcomes, not intentions, are how the world ultimately measures a person, that the results of your actions will be judged long after anyone remembers how well-meaning you felt in the moment. This isn't an invitation to cruelty. It's a warning against self-deception. It's easy to feel virtuous while accomplishing nothing. It's easy to mistake good intentions for good strategy. Machiavelli would ask you to look honestly at your life and separate what felt right from what actually worked. Did being endlessly agreeable get you respect, or did it get you overlooked? Did avoiding every hard conversation protect the relationship or slowly poison it? This is not about becoming heartless. It's about refusing to let sentiment substitute for strategy. Evaluate your choices the way Machiavelli evaluated rulers, not by how noble they sounded, but by what they actually produced. This is the part of Machiavelli people distort the most. And it's worth setting straight. He never said intentions don't matter to your own conscience. He said the world doesn't grade you on them. Two people can want the exact same good outcome. One achieves it through decisive, calculated effort. The other loses everything because they were too busy trying to look virtuous while they did it. Fortune does not reward the one who felt the most noble. It rewards the one who actually moved the needle. Law 7. Build a reputation that cannot be stolen from you. Machiavelli understood something most people never fully grasp. Your circumstances can be taken. Your wealth, your position, even the people around you, all of it can shift or vanish. What remains is the reputation for capability and resolve that you've built through consistent, deliberate action. He wrote that a leader is judged above all by the impression they create through what they consistently do, not by claims, not by charm alone, but by demonstrated competence over time. That applies to you exactly the same way. Character built in public is fragile because it depends on an audience. Character built through 10,000 private decisions, the ones nobody sees, is the only kind that can't be dismantled by a single bad headline or a single betrayal. Decide who you are before the pressure arrives, not during it. Machiavelli's entire body of work is, underneath everything, a manual for this. Decide, then act, not the reverse. Think about why The Prince has outlasted 5 centuries of empires, wars and shifting ideologies while so many of its critics have been forgotten. It's because Machiavelli wasn't writing about temporary tactics. He was writing about the one asset that compounds no matter what era you're living in, a demonstrated, undeniable pattern of competence that speaks for you when you're not even in the room. The 7 laws, restated: 1. Burn the comforting fable. 2. Prepare for the flood before it comes. 3. Train the body that carries the mind. 4. Separate what's yours to command from what belongs to fortune. 5. Choose your hardship before it chooses you. 6. Judge by results, not sentiment. 7. Build the reputation nothing can strip from you. I'm calling this ruthless because it is. Machiavelli never promised comfort, and neither will I. He never told you the world owes you fairness, or that healing arrives on a convenient schedule. What he offers instead is something far more useful: leverage. The unshakable understanding that whatever has been taken from you, your next move is still entirely your own. And if the next move is yours, the next hour is yours. String enough of those together with clear eyes and cold discipline, and the entire life becomes yours again. That's not the comfortable promise. It's the real one. Tell me in the comments which of these 7 laws hit hardest, and what's the first move you're making differently starting today. I read every comment on this channel. Subscribe to the Machiavellian Mind if this is the first time you're finding us. We go this deep every single week, and there's a lot more of Machiavelli's world left to uncover. Until next time, remember what he understood better than almost anyone in history. Fortune governs half of what happens to you. The other half is still yours to seize. Go seize it.